So one would guess that this week's Torah portion has some irony at the beginning of it, but it's not necessarily that ironic. But if you know the week's Torah portion, it is called Chaye Sarah, which means the life of Sarah. You should come tomorrow morning, either 9 a.m. or 11 a.m. or both, and you'll hear a lot more from our B'nai Mitzvah about the portion. But I will share with you that the irony is that it's odd that it's called the life of Sarah, because the second that the portion begins, we find out that Sarah dies at the age of 127. And so one would think, why? Hey, Andrew, what's up, man? One would think it's odd that the Torah portion is called Chaye Sarah if the beginning of the entire portion is that she dies, right? Thanks, Tom. That's okay, no problem. Good catch. It's good. So the interesting thing is that it's not that ironic that we hear that she dies at the beginning, because really the entirety of the portion and really the remainder of much of the book is balanced on Sarah and the life that she leaves. It's almost her legacy, as if. So it's not that ironic that this is how it starts, to say that she dies, but that she's really alive in the story. So there's this great legacy for all of us in thinking of Chaye Sarah. So keep that in mind. Switch over very quickly, and I will tell you that I grew up in the conservative movement. And I grew up, I became a bar mitzvah at a conservative synagogue. It was actually Congregation Beth Israel in Florida. And so I grew up conservative, and I was going to be a conservative rabbi, and then I met this guy named Richard Levy. And Richard Levy, who is the former director of the rabbinic school in Los Angeles, he also then became sort of the director of the synagogue at the rabbinic school in Los Angeles, HUC, where Rabbi Kahn went, and I also went. And so I met him. I actually didn't know it was him. I actually met him at this camp that I was at, and he started to talk to me, and I told him that I grew up conservative, but I was struggling a little with the movement. I wasn't sure, and he said, you should try the Reform movement. And I was like, no, I'm not into it. I don't know much about it. And he said, listen, you should try us out, he says, because we have these new principles coming out, and I think you'll really like what they say. This was in 1999, and he said, the movement's about to change, and I really think that you should be a part of it. And I was like, you know what, thank you, great talk, that was it. So I was actually going to, literally, I was 2 days before I was going to send in the application. This is before you could do it electronically. You had to write out an application and put it in the mail with a stamp on it. This is for the kids in the room. They're like, mail. So I was about to mail in the application, and I get in the mail from HUC, from Hebrew Union College, the Reform Seminary, I get a letter from this guy, Richard Levy, who says it was super nice to meet you. Just in case you were thinking you might want to apply to the Reform Seminary, you should fill out the application I sent, just by chance maybe, and also read the principles. I wanted to talk to you about these principles, and so I enclosed them in this envelope. Okay, so I'm reading through the principles. The completed conservative movement application is sitting here, and I'm reading through what he sent me of the 99 principles, and I read this sentence that says, we are an inclusive community, opening doors to Jewish life, to people of all ages, to varied kinds of families, to all regardless of their sexual orientation, to Gerim, those who have converted to Judaism, and to all individuals and families, including the intermarried, who strive to create a Jewish home. And I thought, wow, that sounds awesome. The conservative movement does not have a set of principles like that. And I thought, I want to do this. And so I kept reading the other sets of the principles, and I kept reading through the packet he sent me. And I thought to myself, sitting in Indiana, where I was working for Indiana University, in my apartment, and I thought, I'm going to fill out the Reform one. This is where I want to be. I want to be part of a congregation, a community that is inclusive, that opens doors to Jewish life, of varied families, regardless of sexual orientation, and people who converted, and families, and intermarried, and anyone who strives to create a Jewish home. And so I thought, speaking of legacy, I thought this community will leave an incredible legacy for Judaism. And I fell in love instantly just by reading that with the Reform movement. I did not know that the person I was talking to was Richard Levy until I saw him again. When I got to the seminary, I was like, you're the guy I was talking to. I didn't put it together. And so fast forward, he became and is a huge mentor of mine and is still a mentor for the Reform movement. And so the legacy of the Reform movement, just so you know, speaking of legacies, has been the tireless fight of discrimination, the consistent support of equality, and the strengthening of the rights of minorities and the rights of women in its inception. Yesterday, at the URJ, the Union for Reform Judaism Biennial in Orlando, a resolution passed on the rights of transgender and gender non-conforming people. And I want you to know that I hope every single person in the room is proud of the Reform movement for continuing to be at the cutting edge of appreciating people and living what their principles say, living what the words say in each and every one of us in the Reform movement. Transgender is a term for people whose gender identity, expression, or behavior, is different from those typically associated with their assigned sex at birth. Gender nonconforming is a term for individuals whose gender expression is different from societal expectations related to gender. And so I want to just read to you 3 parts of the resolution that passed yesterday for the entirety of the movement. We stand now at a moment where we hope to pass on our legacy. The resolution affirms its commitment to full equality, inclusion, and acceptance of all gender identities and gender expressions. This resolution encourages Reform congregants, clergy, camps, institutions, and affiliates, including NIFTY, our youth, to continue to advocate for the rights of people of all gender identities and gender expression. This resolution urges Reform movement institutions to begin or continue to work with local and national Jewish, transgender, lesbian, gay, and bisexual organizations to create inclusive and welcoming communities for people of all gender identities and expressions, and to spread awareness and increase knowledge of issues related to gender identity and expression. These activities may include cultural competency trainings or religious school staff trainings, and it goes on and on and on. That's part of the resolution that passed yesterday for the Reform movement, continuing to be the cutting edge of what Judaism should be like, living their principles and living their ideals as a movement. And so once again, we are at the forefront of Judaism, introducing innovation while preserving tradition, embracing diversity while asserting commonality, affirming beliefs without rejecting those who doubt, and all the while bringing faith to sacred texts. If we can, as a movement, continue to maintain our connections to tradition as an inclusive community, opening doors to Jewish life to all people who strive to create a Jewish home, then our legacy, this movement's legacy, will continue to be strong and continue to be the forefront of Judaism to this day. I hope you are very proud, and on the Shabbat, I hope you reflect on these beautiful words that our movement has put forth in our resolution, and who we are as a people, opening these doors to varied families of the intermarried, all those who strive to create a Jewish home. Shabbat Shalom.